Well, thank you both again for joining me today. I've told you both kind of many times as we've grown to be friends off camera that I am genuine fans of your work, and I do think it's some of the best content that we've had in the Machinima community a long time. And so, thank you both for being on the podcast. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, doing fantastic. Thank you for the compliment towards Dead Silent, but yeah, I'm doing fantastic today. Happy that we're finally able to do this.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a long time. You guys were, I think, one of the first people I wanted to get on the podcast, and once we started getting to the second half of the year, I tried to get you guys on, and our schedules just did not line up whatsoever. And so it's nice that in the new year we're able to finally get this out, because I feel like out of all the podcasts that I'm doing, and like I will do in the future and I've done in the past, this is kind of one of the more important ones, because I find the process that you have come together to do Dead Silent is very fascinating. It's different than everyone else, and it's a lot more complicated than I would say than like Halo Reach, or kind of like what people think is the basicness to make Halo 5 Machinima. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way as that, but it's definitely a lot bigger of production than I think people realize.
Yeah, I mean, it involves a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of different variables we have to think about. Lighting's a big one, especially the maps as well, as Eric usually has to orientate them to fix them together, kind of like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So if something's like out of line in one of the shots on one of the maps, we have to redo the entire thing again just for that one shot. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into the shots in Dead Silent, for sure.
Yeah, like I thought that, you know, I thought that my mathing and scaling days, like I thought that those were done, like, whenever I was, when I graduated. But once I got involved, with Dead Silent, and then kind of pushed it a little further, then we ended up coming up with the new way that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later on, as we get deeper into the topic of Dead Silent. Yeah, I very quickly realized that I was going to be using quite a bit of math and just making sure that everything lined up precisely, because like Charlie said, that if one thing didn't line up, it ruined all the shots, and that could mean like redoing anywhere from a couple shots to redoing upwards to like 15 shots. So yeah, it's definitely a process that I'm sure that we'll get into a little bit later on.
Yeah. So
yeah, and it's.
I was gonna say it's also
go on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Charlie.
I was just gonna say it's also something that we had to figure out as we kind of like making it up along. Like I don't think me or Eric really knew what we were really thought we would be doing from the start. But then as it ramped up in scale and time and effort, we had to rethink our strategy, and that's how I guess, as Eric will mention on later, the strategy we used to try and complete that, I guess.
I think Dead Silent really came in as a breath of fresh air, because the community kind of always had a balance, right? It was a balance between a third of the community was just starting out and was kind of making bad camera angles or just having their friends voice act, which a lot of people still do. And then there's another third who's just doing comedy stuff. It's quick cuts. And then there's the film side. There's the Project Middle Ground, there's the Brotherhood, there's the Dead Silent era, and I think we've kind of weirdly turned away to that. I feel like there's only two eras. There's the era of really bad stuff, and then there's the people who are actually trying to make films. And so, kind of curiosity before we get into Dead Silent, how do you guys kind of view the Machinima landscape as of right now? Because you've kind of created a section for yourself with the Halo 5 kind of era, because Halo 5 is very difficult, as you said, to do lighting. It's very difficult to make the characters look normal and fun and to walk normally. And so how do you kind of view Machinima as a whole right now?
I guess it's like all quiet on the Western Front right now. It feels kind of small, I guess. People are obviously starting to use Infinite, which I think I mean, a lot of people give it quite a lot of crap, but I think it's actually there's a lot of potential there, especially in the forging side. I mean, like the stuff Eric's already done, for example, and that he showed me is just mind blowing. Like, yeah, the amount of stuff you can do is insane. I mean, from lighting. I mean, even the Spartans in Halo 5, the lighting is it's atrocious. Like, the Spartans don't have the correct lighting with the environment, whereas in Infinite, like it's all like 2 to 2, like it all looks like perfect. So um, as far as Infinite goes, there's not as many as I thought there would be, but there's still a few things in like Halo 5 and Halo 4. As you mentioned, Lazy Bunch, he still does stuff in Halo 4. So I mean, it's just quiet. I'd say just quiet.
Yeah, and Kron is about to,
Yeah.
he's about to do Odd Man Out on Halo 4 as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. For me, the landscape, yeah, this could maybe upset some people. I'm not sure, but I do personally think that the the machinima landscape for Halo 5, uh, it's I don't know how to put it without sounding like a piece of shit, but I feel like in a way it's almost like lackluster because of what we've done with Dead Silent. Like knowing what's achievable and knowing what's possible now is like any time that I'm watching another Halo 5 machinima, it's just like, man, like you could have put more detail on that custom built set, or like you could have, instead of filming on a dev map, you could have made your own map. And just knowing the limitations that people think that are there, but we now know and have proven that those limitations are only there if you allow them to be. It's just, I feel like there are so many projects that could have been better and could have definitely, they could have benefited from just taking those limitations and just pushing them to the side and trying to push a little further with Halo 5, because Halo 5 in itself is actually, even with all of its shortcomings, it's an incredible tool. And I wish that more machinima creators were taking advantage of that tool and all of the possibilities that come with it.
Yeah, I feel like people. It all depends on how you approach a product or your problem. Like Halo 4 or had its huge limitations, but I think people were ready to move on from Reach kind of, and they wanted to try the new game because of how quick it came out after Reach. And I don't think they gave the same effort as they did to Halo 5 because of the disappointment issues with 4. Whether it be graphics, whether it be Forge capabilities. I mean, it was very lacking of a game. And as you said, Charlie, Dan's kind of one of the only people that kind of has made that game work. And Halo 5, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't... It's difficult. I mean, there's the whole armor situation where it's a randomizer almost. There's the... Forging is very different than Halo Reach, making it kind of difficult for not even people like me who just don't forge well. And so I think you're right in that landscape is that people don't necessarily, I don't think, try hard enough. Like when they look at Halo 5, they look at it almost as a bad product and they don't even want to put effort into it. And it's coming to the point to where it's now 2023 and we have people still exclusively making Reach and Halo 3 machinimas, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but when the whole landscape is that, I think that's kind of creating the issue, because there isn't really a competition to Dead Silent. The only person making Halo 5 machinima also is Chronicler.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah. Like I can't watch Reach machinimas. I try, but I just can't. Like there's so many times that I remember watching Rise of Spartans sometime after it had come out. Not too long after it had come out, but I remember watching it, and I very specifically remember a scene with a bunch of white elites, like a bunch of white zealots. Like I don't know the name of the map off the top of my head, but I remember just like a wave of them, charging towards the Spartans, and then seeing another Reach machinima not too long after that, and just like the moment that I saw this scene, it was taking place in the exact same spot, but the camera was also almost in the exact same spot, filming almost the exact same scene. Just instead of it being a bunch of elites, it was a bunch of Spartans instead. And every time that I'm watching a Reach machinima, I just see the exact same shots from Rise of Spartan. just it's the exact same shot, just different subject matter. Like it's just different people in the foreground and background, and that's it. And I can't do it. Like just Reach Machinimas always look the same. I cannot watch those in Halo 4. I'm just not a fan of the Forge in Halo 4. Halo 4's Forge is very bland, very flat, very just like one dimensional.
Lacks color as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and just I can't. I can't really get into Halo 4 Machinimas. Now, with that said, I have watched Dan's work, and I think that he does a good job, especially he does a good job with filming on dev maps as well. I didn't watch a whole lot of Halo 4 Machinimas, so I think that that's definitely helped make it's made it easier to watch Dan's work, because I don't have that same kind of disruption in my palette as I do for Halo Reach Machinimas. I'm not looking at Dan's work and being like, oh, I've already seen somebody film something in the exact same spot, exact same shot, just different people. So Dan, as we've talked about, he's done a fantastic job, and I'm very curious to see, with all of the experience that Kron now has, very curious to see what he does with Odd Man Out, since he's going to be continuing that in Halo 4. But yeah,
I feel like there is a interesting thing to say, because I think Halo Reach's main problem was the oversaturation.
Yes.
It was out of every single game, it is the easiest to forge, it's the easiest to use theater, it's the easiest to get armor, and it's the easiest way to develop a story very quickly.
Yeah.
Like you don't have scaling as issues that, like you said, you don't have to put in as much effort as anything else. And I think that's what Rise of the Spartans almost took away from a lot of creators, because every single shot you can take happened in that film. Any kind of piece that you can think of how to use it in a unique way, it was pretty much used in that game. And even then, he used dev maps for so many different creative ways that it created a landscape where every single Reach Machinima was Rise of the Spartans.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I think that's the issue, is because like there's 9 parts to that, right? Including the 2-parter, part 3 A and B, and they were each half hour to 2.5 hours long. That is a lot of Reach Machinima, and so people who enjoyed that, they can't watch anything else. Like I think there's a few works, like I think the Arc by Q-Man I think is amazing, but it's only because of the storytelling. And that's, I think, the only way Reach Machinimas can succeed nowadays is if the script is just outstanding, that you don't think about the visuals.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's different with like Halo 4. Halo 4 did not have the oversaturation market. It just is kind of a new quirk almost. And Halo 5, I think that's the same reason. There's not really an oversaturation in the Halo 5 market. It's really just a couple creators. I mean, it was the Great Isaiah doing stuff there. It was Chronicler. It was you guys there, and there's a couple other international people who have done Halo 5 Machinimas. But how do you guys now, looking at Halo 5, everything that has been done, and what is your reaction initially to Halo Infinite's kind of almost updated forging, but it's still broken quirks? Do you think that Halo Infinite will ever become like what Halo 5 couldn't be for creators, or do you think we're all just kind of stuck in this pool of people just staying in the Reach era?
I think this is going to be another thing that people aren't going to necessarily like to hear, or somebody will find something to complain about. I think that Halo Infinite falls into the same boat as Halo 5, and I think Halo 5 falls into just the simple. I don't even know what word to use that that won't sound like overly offensive. It comes down to people not willing to take the extra time to learn the tool, because Halo 5, that's what it seemed like. A lot of people were overly intimidated by Halo 5's forge. To go from, like you had said, the forging in Halo Reach and Halo 4 were very simple, very, very simple, and then to go from that simplicity to Halo 5, and of course, Halo 5's forge didn't have a great start, with the 2-month delay, and then after every update, every month, there was new issues. There was something, oh, hey, we fixed this bug, but here's a new one, or like, hey, we fixed this one bug, and well, here's 10 new ones. So it was rough. It's definitely something that you had to hang in there for a while. But if it's something that you came into, like a lot of people have already done with Halo Infinite, it seems to be the exact same process happening over again. But a lot of people came into it in the middle of that process, in the middle of all those free updates that we were getting, and they came in and it's like, oh man, this forge is broken, this forge is ass, this thing sucks. I'm not making anything on this. I'm going back to Reach. I'm going back to 4. Like, okay, cool, you're missing out, and that's nobody else's fault except your own. And then whenever it was finally fixed, whenever all the bugs and kinks were worked out, people came back to it, seeing that a lot of people were creating amazing custom games, amazing mini games, amazing maps, and a lot of them were getting really good and really well-deserved notoriety. Then other people tried to come back to it. The same people that said, fuck 5 and go back to 4 and Reach, those same people came back, and then it was too intimidating at that point. It was no longer like, oh, it's buggy and it's ass. It was now like, oh man, this is too much to learn. It's not too much to learn. You memorize the object list, you memorize the tool, just how to move stuff around, which only takes a very short amount of time, and then you're set. You memorize your object list and your tools, and then that's it. You just go from there, and at that point, the limitations are what you set them to be. And I think, again, we've proven that with Dead Silent, that, the limitations are, they are where you set them. And we've taken the limitations and we keep trying to push them. And I'm hoping that with Infinite, that people are, hopefully they'll try to do the same, but I definitely feel that Infinite's going to fall into the exact same situation as Halo 5. Everybody's having more fun having negative conversations about Halo Infinite and its Forge and its theater mode right now, that whenever both of those are finally fully fleshed out and they're both working just as well, again, Halo 5 has a lot of shortcomings, but Halo 5 is an amazing tool whenever it comes to Machinima. Halo Infinite is going to be the exact same way. And whenever it is finally to that point where we have a theater mode that we can actually work with and not move at Mach fuck my ass, and actually get to film some scenes, then there's no reason why nobody wouldn't be able to jump in and create things just as good as Dead Silent, if not better, especially with the Forge being so much more complex, so much more detailed, and the lighting being so gorgeous in Halo Infinite. There's no reason why people shouldn't be able to jump in and make projects just as good, if not better, than what we're doing right now in Halo 5.
And I believe that full-heartedly, but I also feel like Halo Infinite has done every complaint that Halo 5 had. Halo Infinite fixed, like for me, or Halo Infinite fixed from Halo 5. Like me being able to like know which object I have at a quick glance. Halo Infinite does that instantly. Instead of having a box or something, it's like, here's the rock, here's the tree you're looking at, and the scaling is a lot quicker. Like where you said how when you're moving at Mach 10, being able to control your speed like down to a T, I think is a fascinating thing. That it does have to work out some kinks, but I've talked to a lot of other directors who have said Halo Infinite is even more complicated than Halo 5, and I feel like the exact opposite. Actually, maybe I feel out of it. Maybe I'm different, but for me, like I'm able to find things a lot quicker in Halo Infinite than I ever was in Halo 5.
Yeah, well, I'm in the boat like with you. Sorry to interrupt, but like I'm right there with you. Of that, I think that Halo Infinite is just as complicated as Halo 5, if not a little easier, because there's so many things that basically hold your hand in Halo Infinite. Just as you said, like memorizing the object list is so much easier now because you can just, go through and just, you get to see what the object actually is and then the name that's attached to it. But then also you have the folders that you can use to navigate your menus and also control your menus. There's a lot of individual aspects of Halo Infinite's Forge that make it to where it is better than Halo 5. But what I do think, again, outside looking in, both you and I think that it's easier. I think that a large large majority of people are going to look at it and think, if they don't already think this, they look at it and think that it's intimidating, and more so intimidating than Halo 5. But if they would to just, again, take those limitations and open up their mind a little bit more, I think they'll see that Halo Infinite does kind of hold your hand a little bit more than Halo 5 did.
100%. And with this next piece, I kind of want to direct to you, Charlie, because you being the main filmer, the main person who is editing Dead Silent, like, I feel like Machinima mode has really been like, in Halo Infinite, there is a weird glitch with the theater that has made it so, like, you can't have your weapon lord, you can't back up in a clip from a weapon lord, or the weapon pops back up, or the clip doesn't save properly with your armor set. And it's kind of made for people like me and Grady, who are making a Halo Infinite series. We have to film everything in Machinima mode, no matter what it is. And I don't know how much in Dead Silence you guys use Machinima mode in that regard, but how do you think that if, like, theater doesn't get fixed, but like everything else is fixed, how do you think that will transform like how people create machinimas and also the quickness of it? Because machinima mode has always been an extra tool that was unique in Halo 5, that was kind of brought us like a unique way to film, but now we don't have to sit around like in Halo Reach and save the clip, go back and go through all the clips and take it as a limitation because we can't save them.
I'm really excited to
But
hear Charlie's answer for this.
But like it's interesting because you can make machinimas twice as fast because you cut the middleman of having to go back to clips. So I'm just curious as to, like, because there's a lot of limitations there. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that overall, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, we do everything like live. Like we don't really use theater by like any means. Like for multitude of reasons. We have like a glitch like game mode where you can do like Forge, but with without teams, for example. So you can choose to have like the map generated with lighting or without, or generated with lighting. And also we also use a lot of prefabs and props. And when you go to theater, a lot of that stuff glitches out. It just explodes. Pieces go flying. But yeah, I mean, and also I feel like it gives you more in the moment. I guess you can kind of see things. I mean, theater is useful, especially for like big action scenes where you've got like lots of people. You can kind of replay it, find different angles and so on. But I feel like if you're in machinima mode, it's more focused. And also, as you said, like you're cutting out the middleman. You're saving so much more time. Like it's just tedious at that point as well, having to go back and forth, back and forth. So yeah, I mean, Infinite as opposed to Halo 5, I know there's the to do it, because I haven't actually used much of Infinite when it comes to machinima mode as of yet, but I know if a character moves, their weapon raises. Is that correct?
Uh, yes, it's a very
Yeah.
weird quirk that you have to. So like how Grady and I have done filming is we have to do all filming with an extra person. So I can't body act if I'm filming the scene. And so if it's a 2-person scene, it actually requires 3 of us.
Yes. Yeah. Which I mean, you still have that same issue in Halo 5, but I also think as long as you've got friends to help you, it wouldn't be much of an issue. And also you're just only going to be down by one man. But it also allows you to see, because if you're doing the actions, you can't actually see what's going on. You can only see it from your perspective. But if you're actually standing back and actually, like, dare I say, like directing, you actually get to see how everything looks. So like, and also if you're doing it from first person, just playing as your character, you go into theater and you see that some guy was actually holding the wrong weapon the entire time behind you, but obviously you wouldn't know that because you couldn't see them. But if you're standing afar in machinima mode flying about while the session's live, you can go, oh, dude, switch your weapon, bro, to the DMR, for example, because that's what it needs. So I feel like, yeah, theater mode was kind of like it's more of a primitive state of like filming, so to speak. It's more simpler because you can rewind time back and forth, but I feel like it's also kind of cheating, because like obviously you can't do that in real life. You can't go, oh, everyone just reverse back to your previous spots. You have to actually restart the whole thing. So I feel like it's a good it mimics real life filmmaking as well. So sets you up for the real world.
Yeah, and I think what theater has kind of turned into as you said, kind of primitive way of doing it, but it also was the whole backup way. It was like if something goes wrong in your clip files, you can always go back to that scene and refilm it. Because there's been I've experienced issues where like your files get corrupted, and so you have to redo that entire session. But with credit to what you're saying with Machinima mode, is like if there's someone with the wrong armor, the wrong color, having the wrong weapon, you can't see it. And like when you're doing B-roll, you can't necessarily see any of that, and you just have to hope for the best with that everyone in your body acting crew knows what they're doing, is experienced, and is able to get you the product that you need.
Precisely, yeah.
And so kind of moving on to, I kind of want to, we've talked a lot about the grand scheme of Machinima, and I kind of want to bring it a little bit more down with the start of Last Second Films. And this is kind of more towards you, Charlie, because you of course started the channel. You of course have a couple shorts that are public, from Drop Zone to Dallas. And what kind of got you into the Halo 5 Machinima space, and what of course there's a huge jump in improvement from those shorts to Dead Silent. It's almost night and day between the 3-year span that publicly is shown there. So what kind of what improvement do you see, like mainly as far as like your writing or like how you develop a story, and how do you kind of look back at those shorts that you have earlier on your channel?
So the earlier shorts, which is where I started my channel, I made those during college, on my days off with some friends, and they were very, as you can probably, if you look at my channel, they're very amateurish. They're not anything to write home about. They're not great pieces of work by any means, but I always try and pick like a theme or like a focus. Like the Drop Zone was very clearly a homage to Halo 3 ODST, and Mantis 4 was clearly inspired by Titanfall, for example. But they were just it was just experimenting. That was the big thing, just having fun with it. Like at the end of the day, I didn't care if they were shit, just as long as I was having fun. Then I made those short stories of characters, and the thing about those was that was actually going to be like a series. I was going to have like short stories to introduce them, and then at the end, I was going to combine an entire series with those characters, bring them in all together. But the big thing that I found was it was too ambitious and daunting to start it out like that. Too many voice actors, too many factors. Oh, Eric's just dropped. Oh, okay, he's back in. But yeah, there's just too many factors for me to start out, especially as a novice. So I kind of had to, I guess, bring it back a little bit, start from scratch. And that's when I started to, so I basically, pan that entire series. That's why I started to do the zombie series. And we actually got, for Dead Silent, sorry, we actually got through to chapters 1 to 4. But by the time we were finishing chapter 4, that's where we met Eric. And I mean, Eric will probably tell you the whole story for that. But when he came along, we actually basically just stole maps. Well, not stole, that's a strong word, but we got maps, and then we'd obviously create them in the description, but we just take maps for anything, like game modes, PvP maps, 4v4s, BTB, you name it. And we just take those maps and integrate it into the story. One day, one of my friends invited someone, and that's when Eric came along, and he offered to help make the maps for us. And then, over time, we just kind of realized, we can remake these maps a whole lot better with a lot more detail. And then, we decided that was the best case scenario, and we kind of went from there. So, yeah.
And before we move into like how you two met, I think it is a credit to kind of how Machinima has evolved, with how kind of back in the old days, majority of people just either took maps from other people, used other people's game modes, used dev maps, and that was the kind of the main scope. And we only use, like, Rise of the Spartans is all Two Steps from Hell and Halo music and other OSTs. But when we come into the current space, I mean, like, for my series at Grady, we have someone who's forging all the original maps for us. We're looking for a composer right now. You, Eric, of course, compose everything for Dead Silent right now, and it's fascinating how these have become more as close as you can get to a film production, as we were talking about earlier with Machinima mode, how it's a live session, how we don't get redos. If you want to redo it, you redo that shot right then and there. And if something happens, you have to go back and reshoot the whole thing. And I do find that we have moved in a positive direction, even though the community has seemed to be getting smaller in a way.
Yeah.
And I feel like everything that's going to come out, I feel like in the future, especially with Halo Infinite, is just going to be better than anything that has been done in the past, just because of the people in the crew behind it who want to make these productions good have just expanded like no one has really seen before. And kind of moving into where you guys met, because I feel like that's a very important part of how Dead Silent is successful. Charlie, you said how you've completed 4 chapters of Dead Silent, which is how long were those each? Like, were they 40 minutes or were they shorter?
They were a lot shorter. They were only like 15 minutes, but I mean, there was still a lot of work that, went into a lot of time that went into them. And yeah, Eric was kind of the big, well, he really just aided, at making us increase the level of quality. But I mean, Eric will probably tell you the story a lot better than I can, so I'll leave that to him.
So yeah, Eric, let's talk about your involvement with Dead Silent, because you can't, like, of course, Charlie started this out. He's 4 chapters in, and now you come and tell kind of how you got
really
involved
good friend.
with Last Second Films.
He forges, or he used to forge, and he's really, really good at lighting. I jumped on one night, and he had sent me a message saying, "Hey, do you want to jump in here and check this out?" I jumped in with him, and he was in the very first version of the gas station from Chapter 2 of Dead Silent. He was on that map, and there was all kinds of people on there. Like there were too many people. You can tell Charlie was uncomfortable. He was like, "Who the hell are all these people?" I jump in there, and they had asked. It was a weird train of people. Charlie's friend Will had asked a scripter named Bob. Bob is here to jump in and help with some scripting stuff. Bob jumped in there, noticed there was some stuff with lighting that could be done better. So then Bob invited Koeki. Then whenever I got online, Koeki invited me. And when I joined in, I was just looking around at this set and just like, Koeki was asking me questions like what I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, it's all right. It's got a good start, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking the whole time like, this thing fucking sucks. Like this is bad. And Charlie, he had said that he needed to go and have dinner, and it was only supposed to take him like 45 minutes. And 2 hours later, he comes back, and I've completely rebuilt the map. I changed the filter on it. I remember he came back. I changed it to the filter that we use now, and I remember he'd come back and he was like, "Oh man, I don't think we can change the filter because I've already got a lot of stuff filmed that doesn't have this filter on, so it would kind of ruin it." I was like, "Damn it, okay." So I changed it back to what it was, and I was like, "All right, I'll kind of fuck off." And he had sent me. He had ended up sending me the rough draft that he had done for episodes 1, 2, and 3. I remember that night I sat down, watched episode 1. For some reason, decided to watch episode 2, and I picked what I thought was the worst set between the first 2, and the worst set was Jet's hideout in episode 1, and it was just a big, just dark room that had like a couple glowing vending machines and some pallets against the walls. Like it was just straight black with Jet and Apollo standing there talking to each other, looking like they're in the middle of the day. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? And so that night I had built Jet's hideout that is seen in Chapter 1 of Dead Silent, and showed it to Charlie the next morning whenever he got on. And from there, it was just kind of like, all right, let's do this, and just completely scrapped the entirety that he already had, like the rough drafts, almost finished versions of episodes 1 through 3, and he had said fuck it, and we scrapped all of it and started all the way from the start and started building sets. And I remember the city street. It was only supposed to be like the city street in episode 1. It was only supposed to be, it was going to be our first attempt of stitching maps together, and it was only supposed to be one long city street cut into 2 different maps, just to make it as simplistic as possible. But then it just wound up being a little much. It wound up being a little difficult. We weren't quite sure how to approach it at the time. It was just an ambitious idea that we had no idea what we were doing, and so we just kind of did what we could. It was the original city scene was very plain, and I don't know why either of us looked at it was like, that'll do. And I remember we got the news that Halo Infinite was going to get delayed a whole nother year, and for some reason, like, just that news alone was for us to be like, all right, let's do it again. Let's just completely start from scratch, except for Jet's hideout. Everything else gone. So we're now starting, and at this time we had now decided to change it from episodes to chapters so that it sounded and felt more like an actual story. And that's whenever I started to work on the city, and knowing that I wanted it to be huge. Like, if I was going to work on a city, I wanted it to be a fucking city. And I've been to quite a few cities as well, so I was just taking inspiration from, like, St. Louis, Chicago, Austin, just wherever I could get inspiration. I was just kind of throwing it in there. And Charlie had jumped in on, like, the first building that I had finished. I remember we ended up naming all the buildings. This is American as fuck, but every building was named after a gun. It was like the first building that I had worked on was called the M1 Garand, and then we had like M16, M4, like the bank that they end up they jump onto the rooftop of. They jump out of the AK-47 onto the top of the M4, like that. Yeah, it sounds weird, but like that's the way that we broke everything down. We knew what building was what. We just threw different weapons onto the buildings. Like, each building was attached to its own gun, and then that's how we knew, okay, this goes here, this is all in place. I built in Forge, I built like a scale, and I labeled all the buildings, and actually, like, there's a shot right after they get into the Warthog in chapter 1. They get the Warthog in the middle of the city. They jump in it, they start driving off, and we have this gorgeous shot that's up inside of one of the skyscrapers overlooking the city. And that's actually a miniature. That's where the city kind of started, is that we built this, both Charlie and I together built this miniature scale city, like this like 1/16 or whatever the hell, like, scale version of the city. And then we were like, okay, wouldn't it be really cool if we had like a full-scale version of this miniature city that we just built? And we went for it. And I remember showing him the M1 Garand, and then we just started kind of coming up with ideas of like, how can we do this? How can we pull this off? Because we don't want to just simply, make this big elaborate city and then just throw the camera wherever the fuck and hope that green screen everything stitches together good. Like, we wanted it to be as precise as possible. And I remember we went through, like, what was it, Charlie, like 5 different iterations or something of the camera rig. Yeah, and then we were about to give up. We were both just like, all right, let's Charlie was like, man, I'm really tired. I remember it was like 10 o'clock at night for him. He was like, I got work in the morning, I need to jump off of here. And just as we were about to jump off, he figured it out. Like, I was getting ready to go over to start building other stuff, and then Charlie's like, wait, let's try this. And then sure enough, within just a matter of like 10 minutes, we had it completely figured out, and we're like, okay, like, everything changes from this point on. Like, everything is different. And it was that completely that took the direction of Dead Silent and put it down a path that I don't even think Charlie and I were even close to prepared for. I think even though Charlie and I didn't know the road that we were taking, I think that it's the only possible road that we that we could have taken. For Dead Silent to be what it is now, the amount of work and the amount of effort that we put into just each individual chapter, and chapter 4 especially, we've had a lot of hurdles, a lot of struggles, and a lot of obstacles that we weren't ready for, because we didn't know. You never know whenever something's going to go wrong, or most of the time you don't. So it's just kind of been it's definitely been a big learning process for the both of us. But it's if to compliment Charlie here, if Charlie wouldn't be the hardworking and very determined individual that he is, then Dead Silent wouldn't be what it is. There's a lot of people that they try to take on a project of this scale, or a project with the amount of effort that we're putting into Dead Silent, where they would definitely be hyped for it at the start, but then they would kind of fall off of it really quickly. But fortunately, Charlie, he loves Dead Silent, and he wants to see it through to the end just as much as I've fallen in love with it and want to see it through to the end. The countless, and it is definitely countless hours that we have stayed up just talking about the entirety of the story of Dead Silent, but then also just like we'll be having random conversations and then just snap like, oh fuck, like what if we did this? Like what if this happened? Oh dude, what about this character? And just here and there, like the amount of dedication and the amount that he is invested into Dead Silent is probably the biggest reason why it is what it is right now, and why we're in the direction that we are at the moment.
I think something interesting that you said a bit back is about stitching maps together, and I think that is a huge part of Dead Silent that I don't think people really can understand the scope of that. Like you guys have, of course, showed it to me behind the scenes, but Eric, why don't you tell me more about how you have made these cities so large, and then Charlie kind of like pick up on that and kind of talk to me about like the editing process of that, because I don't think people understand fully that large of a scope that you guys and the amount of effort that you guys put in. Like what a lot of people would just use one map and then switch locations. This is it's a huge endeavor that you guys have taken on for yourselves.
Yeah. So like I was saying before, is that we didn't want to just throw. We didn't want to just make all of these individual buildings, throw these characters, and throw these zombies all over the city streets, and then just you pray to God, or pray that all right, this will work. Green screen will do it for us. Like we wanted to make sure everything was as accurate as possible. So that came down to us deciding that we were going to have an anchor point. We took advantage of prefabs. So the entire city was built off of one 16 by 16 block. It was a 16 by 16 by 4, and it was a corner sidewalk piece. That's all it was. It was just that one piece, and that Charlie would take the prefab of the camera rig that we had developed. He would take that camera rig, put it wherever he would determine where he wanted the shot to be. He would have somebody stand there. This goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, developing kind of like how do we film? And one of the many ways that Charlie, he utilizes filming is that we'll have the characters stand in frame, where Charlie thinks that he wants them to be. He'll take the camera frame, he'll put it up in place, or the camera rig. He'll put it wherever it is that he needs it to be. He'll figure out, do I need to delete the floor? Do I need to delete the wall? Like, just get impossible shots. And then once we've got that figured out, we then take that anchor object, which in the city's case was at 16 by 16 by 4, and he would grab that object first, grab the camera rig, and group it all together and save it as just whatever the hell he decided to name it. And now we knew that that one camera rig, in whatever direction it's looking, any map that exists in that direction, he takes that same prefab, and every time that I made a new map, every time that the city got a new building, or it got a new sidewalk, or new city street, any time that I had a new map, and we got all the way up to, I believe it was 40 it's either 42 or 48, but either way, you take that number and you double it, because every set that we built, we also had to make a full green screen version of it as well. So the city wound up being just shy of 100 maps, or maybe even a little over 100, because Charlie had multiple versions of each. Anyways, um, we would have the camera, pointing in that one direction, and each time that I made a new map, I made sure that that exact same 16 by 16 by 4 existed in the exact same location as it did on the first map. The first map where we built the camera rig, that one block persists across all 48 maps for the city. So now it's just as simple as you make sure that one block is your parent object, you make sure you attach it to the camera rig, and then whatever direction that camera is looking, you just go to those individual maps and you just drop that prefab, magnetize your 16 by 16 to that anchor point, and you have the exact same placement of the buildings, so it looked like, and it is, a fully built city. Sidewalks line up, all the buildings are in their proper individual locations. It's not just throwing them in the same spot on a different blank canvas. Everything lines up exactly how a true city would be lined up. Actual city blocks, sidewalks, street lights, everything, down to even the markings on the road, everything lines up 100% because of that camera rig and the amount of time that we put into just planning the city in general.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to what Eric said though, but like the longevity of it as well, I feel comes down to the fact that we're working together as a team. It's nice to know that Eric has the same level of passion I have for Dead Silent, and the way he, I mean, when you look at the series as well, the amount of sets and locations there are, and you have to think that Eric is the one making them. We also have Nick, who also does the props and prefabs. But as Eric kind of describes it, it's kind of like a game dev where like Nick will make assets, which then Eric will then place on the map in certain locations, and then do all the lighting, etc. So the whole thing is, before we even start filming, there's tons of work that needs to be done with making the maps. I mean, Eric will always go in discussion about especially if it's an action scene, where the attention of detail needs to be, and where everything needs to be centralized around. But going back to the camera rig, the things we can pull off with it are amazing. We can literally make entire cities, as as is shown in episode 1. But we also use it for a lot of smaller shots as well. Even dialogue things, we can kind of put it in a certain position, and then we put little markers on the floor where people will stand, and then we can basically just put a green screen behind them, and then the backdrop will then be usually blurred out just a little bit, just to kind of play onto that whole element of like depth of field, for example. But also has like some issues as well, because when you're using it, you're angling it, but you can't actually see through the lens, so to speak. So you're kind of like guessing where you think it's going to be. So like you'll aim it at like this location, but okay, I think that's where it's looking. But then when you go and actually fly into the rig using theater mode, you realize, oh wow, that's kind of like off a little bit. So you have to kind of reorientate it a little bit every now and then. So it does have the element of like, it takes a bit of time, but also I think it's worth doing that, because the finished product is always worth the rewards. Having multiple maps built up in the background that isn't physically plausible, and also having the ability to add effects to it as well, like depth of field, is I think a big game changer for sure.
Yeah, it was huge for us, because it took us from the limitation of 1,600 objects on one canvas to now we had no limit. We currently have no limit whatsoever. I hit 1,600 objects and I'm fucking stoked. I'm like, all right, cool, 3,200 objects. And then I hit 3,200 and then just keep adding 1,600. I don't care how many maps they are. Like, I want to keep it low, so then that way Charlie doesn't have to do so much filming. But then the city, like, and we kind of punched ourselves in the nuts doing this, but like the city set such a standard. The city was 48 maps, just shy of 50, man. Like that's insane. So the next biggest one after that was the quarry from chapter 2. That was 19 maps. The trailer park in chapter 2, that was 29 maps. and then we see the quarry again in chapter 3. In chapter 4, there's a sawmill that we built, and the sawmill is 28 maps. Like there are so many maps, but the visual payoff is worth it. And I think that, again, just as I was talking about earlier, the camera rig, it pointed us in a direction that I don't even think that either of us thought that this was going to be. That first time that I built Jet's hideout, that was all on one canvas. That wasn't multiple maps. We did a couple cool tricks with lights, making it look like there's fog off in the distance, but it's not. Again, like I said, it's a light. It's not actually the fog in game, so it gave us more control over the fog in the actual foreground. So all the background fog, it's not even actual fog. So we did some cool little stuff like that, and we're like, all right, yeah, this is going to be cool. This is going to be fun. We get to flex our creative muscles, and now it's like, man, like it's, I don't even know like what to call it. It's not flexing our creative muscles, because we're way past that now. And I'm not trying to sound like pretentious, but just we know that what we're working on is something that's special, and we know that what we're working on is impressive, because we're the only ones that have done it. We're the only ones that have tried to do this. And I think that the end result speaks volumes about the amount of effort and time that does get put into this project.
So I think that's what, like, it's that's the reward to it, really, isn't it? Like, which we're kind of pushing ourselves, like challenging. Like each chapter, we do something that we haven't done before, which we'll definitely see in this chapter as well, chapter 4. There's multiple things that it's our first attempt, which is another reason why it's taken us a little bit longer as well. But it's just, I think we do these things not because I guess they're easy, but because they are hard. And I feel like because of that, it's more of an enjoyable process, especially the finished product, for sure.
So what is taking so long with chapter 4? Like, I mean, like guys were banging out chapters like throughout that whole year, and chapter 4 has taken an extensive amount of time. So what are those kind of new quirks that you guys are kind of working on that is kind of pushing your creativeness in this story?
Well, I mean, I'll just talk about the kind of the surface level things, but one of them is obviously like real life. I now have a job that's a bit more demanding of my time, and Eric's also started working as well, and he works insane hours, but obviously Eric has to provide and so on. So it's kind of and also I'm English, Americans are American. Eric is American, so that's EST and GMT. So we're also working in different time zones. So we're not always on together, but we try and multitask and get things done regardless. And because of the again, coming back to us like constantly pushing and discovering new things, the things that we did at the start of chapter 4, whereas now we've come towards the end of the production, we're actually looking back at the older stuff we've done, and we're like, it's all right, but we can do it better. And that's kind of like the mentality that we have. And also, we're kind of technical difficulties as well. At one point, my computer, I was doing all of this on a laptop, and it got to the point where I literally couldn't do anything on it. Like, it just froze, crash. I couldn't like add anything extra to it. So I basically had kind of like no choice but to upgrade. So I got a Mac Studio, but even this has become problematic. It just gets slow very quickly. The main reason for it, which I found out, is just purely down to the sheer amount of clips that we use, because each shot that we do, because of the green screens and the camera rigs, is at least a minimum of 2 shots to make 1 shot as a minimum. But if you bear in mind things like the sawmill, for example, which, as Eric said, 28 maps, is that right? Yeah, 28 maps. So if we have a establishing shot of the sawmill with the characters on and so on, and a warthog, you then have to make sure that in that shot you're incorporating every single map that needs to be in the establishing shot. So that could be like 12 maps, for example, and that's just for the establishing shot. And then when you do action through the entire sawmill, which we do have an action scene, for each second or each shot that lasts like half a second, we still have to incorporate 12 shots or 12 maps in that one shot. And on average, a shots last like 2 to 3 seconds. and chapter four's now over an hour long in length as well. So that's a lot of clips, and that's not even including effects or music or audio. That's just literally just clips. Um, so yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense why my computer gets so slow. But either way, we tried to split the chapter. We were thinking of splitting it. In the end, we decided against it, which is ironic because of what happened. But um, as we tried to split the chapter, because I use Final Cut Pro and it saves automatically, I split it and duplicated the project. But then I deleted the previous one and exited out, and it didn't save. And also, because of how slow my previous laptop was, I actually disabled backup on it because it was that slow. Because every time you render, it also renders a backup. And I was thinking the amount of times that I'm rendering, because I'm not an idiot, right? Like I'm not gonna delete it or anything like that, which is again ironic because that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, basically I lost like literally 60% of chapter four, just straight gone. But luckily, complete idiot, because me and Eric do this thing where whenever a scene's done, we upload it to like the YouTube channel, but unlisted, so that we can kind of like review it and we can be like Eric can kind of be like, oh, this works, or this doesn't work, and so on. And we can kind of talk about it. So we actually, luckily, like a week before I lost like 60% of it, I uploaded literally everything that we had from start to finish.
Yeah, you uploaded
The
the
second
first
half,
half
yeah.
and then the second half,
Yeah,
and that
even the
kind of
newer stuff
saved
as well.
our
Like
ass.
there was some even newer scenes I redid in like a couple of days. I really like grind, to get them done. And luckily they were also uploaded as well. I was actually panicking, like, oh God, like I spent literally like 40 hours of no rest, just grinding, getting these scenes done. So so we know the list of them and the order of them, because we got them in on YouTube, but we will still have to manually put them back in the timeline if we want to redo the audio, which we probably will end up doing. But luckily we know the order and we've got the clips. It's just more of a matter of just putting them back in the timeline. So it just means more time. But I mean, again, this is something that, lesson learned, I guess. We won't do again, but
But I don't think there's enough credit that is given to that simple fact. There is that, like, we've seen a lot of creators over time stop their project because they lost files, or they decided, you know what, this project is too ambitious. And I think that's a credit to both of you, that you guys, whether you lost everything or not, you guys were still going to complete chapter 4.
yeah. I mean,
And it
go.
and what
No,
were
no,
you going to
go
say?
on, sorry.
And I think it was awesome that you guys have a backup, so you didn't waste all that time. But I think it's just a small thing, because we'll talk for hours on the stitching of maps, the camera rig, the just every little nitty-gritty piece that you guys have developed to really create your own film style in creating Dead Silent. But in reality, all that kind of goes out the window if you don't have the dedication to get it
Yeah.
done. And
Yeah.
you guys have redone after redone after redone every single part. You have, Charlie, you had all 4 chapters pretty much mostly mapped out and mostly finished, and you saw the mistakes and went back and redid it. And I think that says both to your guys' character and dedication, even through, like, Eric, you're gone for like 2 weeks at a time, and you guys are still able to get this project done. And I think that's just something I wanted to mention to really bring that to light. And so,
That was one thing that actually kind of like it helped out a lot. Yeah, my wife, she was working. She was doing a security job, and I got to be a stay-at-home dad for just shy of 3 years. And in that time is whenever I met Charlie, then started getting involved with Dead Silent, and it was definitely it was a kick in the nuts to go from being a stay-at-home dad, getting to take care of my children, and then jump on and work on Dead Silent all the time with Charlie, to suddenly like, hey man, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks straight and I can't do anything. And then I'll have another 2 weeks off, but then after that, I'll be gone for 2 weeks again. So that was definitely, like, we definitely slowed down, but it was also because just around the time that I got that job, Charlie had gotten the job that he had just brought up a little bit ago. And so our jobs becoming more, more demanding. That slowed us down a little bit. But um, to go back to what you were saying about the dedication, is that when I built Jet's hideout, that one night, after meeting Charlie and seeing the rough draft of of episodes 1 through 3, seeing those, and then he gets on the next morning. I stay up all night long. He gets on, and then right there, after just a little bit of discussion, he's completely willing to just say fuck it and start from scratch, all because of that one set. So I was like, man, like that's a bold choice to make after seeing just one creation, after one thing that I built. So then it was like, all right, yeah, like I'm in this now. Like this is, I'm gonna put everything that I can into this. And after a little while of seeing just how much he too was putting into it, is like, okay, like this is cool. Like this is something I really want to be a part of. And now it's become, it got to a point that Charlie and I talk to each other every day more than we talk to our own families and like the people that we were in the same house with.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. Like we constantly back and forth, just like back and forth in a good way of like, all right, we can do this, we can do this. What about let's change this up a little bit. And there's some amazing stuff we've done with chapter 4 too. There were characters that we weren't going to introduce until season 2, one we weren't going to introduce until season 3, and then just in the middle of it we're like, oh man, what if we tried this? And we just start throwing, within just like 35 minutes of being on the phone with each other, just bam, like, all right, cool, we got ourselves something here. Like this is awesome. And now chapter 4 has shaped up to be something really special, and chapter 4 is going to be really integral into the rest of the story as well. There's a lot of things that continuously loop together, just like chapter 1 into chapter 2 with the stranger on the bridge and then Apollo finding their hideout. And there's even more with that ties into chapter 4 as well. So there's so many things that we're tying together and looping just to create this world, to create this story, that there's not just things going on with the two main characters. There's things going on with every single person that we spend even just a fraction of time with. You'll see that there are things going on with them, and they'll continue to be going on with them
Yeah.
until the end.
I mean, it's also just like there's a couple of things that we do in this chapter, directions that we took, which Eric and I, as mentioned, had discussions about, but that we haven't really, I guess, seen anyone do in the Machinima community before. Eric will know what I'm on about, but there's a towards the end of the episode, there's a 10-minute sequence that is hopefully will have people on the edge of their seats. Like it's pretty cool. I won't give too much away, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it involves the flashlight of a shotgun, and that's and just to kind of for anybody that listens to this and has seen chapter 4, or will listen to this then see chapter 4, in this scene, we wanted to utilize the flashlight on the shotgun, but whenever you're holding the shotgun, the flashlight isn't actually working. It's on the gun, but it doesn't actually put out any light. So it's kind of it's a lie. But we wanted to make it not a lie, so we actually wound up, Nick, War Dog, the same one that works on our props and prefabs. Him and I, we had just kind of, I had the idea, bumped heads with him, was like, hey, let's see if we can make this work. And then just a little later, a couple days later, we've got it working to where we have a light that is right around the exact same level of the light on the shotgun, and as the character rotates and moves, you have to it takes two people to get this light to work. You have one character that's holding the shotgun, and that you have to do a countdown, and both characters have to move at the same time, because there's a second person that's flying up above the set in a phaeton, and that light that's on the shotgun is welded to the bottom of the phaeton. So the phaeton is up above the map, and the pilot and the person, your body acting, have to work together, and they have to do a countdown, and they have to turn the exact same speed together in order to make it look like that shotgun is actually shining light on the set as the character is turning. So yeah, it's some wild stuff that we're trying to do just to make the world feel like a world, like not to, we're not gonna cut any corners or just, half-ass and like accept less just because of the limitations, and that goes right back to what we were
Yeah,
saying
we
earlier.
try to make sure that.
I
Oh,
think.
go on.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
go
gonna
for it,
say, yeah,
Charlie.
we just try to make sure that everything has like a story, I guess. Like even the story of the shotgun itself, like, is something that we thought quite a bit about because, as Eric said, the utility of it having a flashlight is just completely useless, and also when you pull it out during like a daytime encounter, for example, it still has the flashlight on, despite there being no need to have a flashlight on. So we even like write around items in the game to our liking. So yeah, the shotgun, like, we thought we would never use, but then we kind of, thought about what was the best way to utilize it, and how we really utilize it, and that's how we yeah, Nick and Eric developed the phaeton technique or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah,
Yeah,
phaeton light. There you go.
phaeton light.
So over this podcast, I feel like this is the masterclass in promoting Dead Silent. But to kind of wrap things up here with, like, of course, we talked about Halo 5. Some people won't watch the Machinima because it's Halo 5. Some people might not watch the Machinima because, oh, it's just another zombie like Machinima, right? Dead Silent. So why should people push back any of their precursor ideas of Dead Silent and just sit down and watch all the episodes? Why should they take the time to pretend that we haven't you haven't listened to the rest of the podcast, and this is just right now is what you're listening to it? Why watch Dead Silent?
I guess because there's nothing like it, to put it plainly. I mean, the you take, I think, any aspect of it, like the sets, for example, and I think you'd struggle to really find anyone that puts as much effort into the sets as Eric does. And I mean, again, like I said, everything's got a story, so the sets themselves tell a story. And I think something we strive on as well is rewatchability. So when you watch it once, that's one thing, but then when you go back, you're actually noticing things that you hadn't noticed before, and things that kind of combine to a similar separate story, and like motifs and themes that we try to incorporate as well. So I think it's just kind of, we really try to usher in that sense of quality, I guess. Yeah, quality is where I put it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the quality alone, that is enough to at least give it a chance. I think that Dead Silent, just as I've mentioned multiple times now, I think Dead Silent is proof that limitations are what
Mm.
you set them as. And if someone is willing to push that limitation of, oh, it's just another zombie machinima, oh, it's just another Halo 5, or I don't want to watch it because it's Halo 5. If you push aside those limitations that you're putting on yourself, just as we had pushed aside those limitations, then I think that you would actually get to appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, we know that there's some parts of the story right now that are a little generic, but we know the
Yeah.
future of Dead Silent. We know that the story, it does really become its own. It becomes something that we hope people will form an attachment to specific characters, and just basically the exact same feeling you get when you're watching your favorite TV show. We're really pushing for that emotionally, but also, again, the effort that we're putting into it, proving that things like this are possible. And now with Halo Infinite's Forge, I think just it comes back to being willing to push those limitations to the side. And if somebody watches Dead Silent and they either feel inspired, or they feel even just a little bit more maybe intrigued or interested to either to get back into Machinima, or to maybe either give Halo 5 a shot, or think like, okay, yeah, once Halo Infinite's really on its final steps of being completed, then jump on a Halo Infinite and try to produce something similar to what we've done, because as I've already stated before, it is possible. You take the time, memorize object menus, memorize the tools, and get past some of the little bugs that do exist and will exist. There's never not going to be bugs. So just don't complain about those. Get past those. Make sure that you don't set limitations for yourself, and you can create something just as beautiful as Dead Silent. And that's why I personally hope that somebody would sit down and watch it. Hope that it inspires them to either to push their creative limitations or to even just give it a shot.
Sure.
Well, again, thank you both for sitting down and talking to me for so long through any technical difficulty that hopefully the audience doesn't notice, to just just kind of everything in general. I appreciate you guys actually sitting down with me and getting to talk through this whole process, because it is genuinely fascinating how you guys have developed Dead Silent, and I look forward to seeing Chapter 4 and also what you guys create together next.
Man. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us and to struggle through the technical difficulties on my end.
Hey, if anyone made it through this to the end of this podcast, just put no technical difficulties here in the comment section. Just out of curiosity to see who got this far. Anyway, we'll see you guys on the next episode.